All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Sandpoint Arts, Culture and Preservation Commission. This is Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. And this meeting is now called to order at 4 p.m. Let's go ahead and take a roll call. How do you want to do the roll call going forward? Have everyone say their name?
Yeah, actually, if you
what's the
want
best way?
to call out names and then they can say
Say
present.
it, present?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
Barry Burgess,
Here.
Carol Kowalczyk,
Here.
Ellie Sussness, here. Hannah Combs,
Present.
Karen Wiedemeyer, here. Mike Lithgow, who would be on the Zoom.
And he
Here.
is just,
Oh, there
Hi,
you
Mike.
go.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Present.
Stephen Garvin,
Steve.
Steve, sorry.
Here.
Woody Sherwood,
Here.
Heather Upton,
Here.
and our guest Andy Dorman.
still don't see him yet.
Okay. All right. Andy's going to make a presentation. And so what I'd actually like to have happen is if someone could move to make item 7A the first item of the agenda.
Make
So
a motion to amend the agenda to 7A, the first action item, the first item on the agenda.
Thank you, Woody. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Carol seconds. That motion, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion is passed. Let's go ahead and move that up. However, is Andy here yet?
Nope.
Nope.
This is going to go check on Andy. So shall we just continue
Sure.
moving forward and he'll
Yeah,
pop
we'll
in?
just plug in Andy as soon as he gets here.
Yeah, we can move on to the general announcements. Are there any commission announcements or reports? All right. Let's move on to the meeting minutes approval from July 26, 2022. Did everybody get a chance to see the meeting minutes? May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 26, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second? Thank you, Barry. All in favor of approving those minutes? Any nays? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's keep moving then. Next up, I just wanted to let everybody know what the SURA budget is. So I had, this worked out really well in the past year or so to have the SURA budget listed as the finances. It just gives everybody an idea of what we have kind of in the balance. So in the downtown is $137,523.69. In the northern, it's $73,998.37. We also have listed here what is remaining in the budget for the Silver Box program. Already we've spent $14,840.22, and the remaining balance is $5,159.78.
Yeah, let's elaborate on what SURA is.
And what if there's commitments from these funds already?
Perfect. So it's the Sandpoint Urban Renewal Agency, and it's in conjunction with the city, but it's its own private or public entity that's separate. And on the City of Sandpoint's website, it has a really great history about how it was started, and essentially it's for capital improvement projects. So we're identifying different areas for renewal dollars, and what that historically has meant is so that those finances go back towards public art and in different spaces. And one thing that I thought was really interesting on the website, you could see all the past SURA projects that the renewal agency has funded and the amounts too. So as we're embarking into thinking about new projects, how much those individually cost. And it's always fascinating to me to see that, and also to see different pieces of art downtown and be like, okay, that's from SURA dollars. So 2 areas have been identified. And the first area, and I think there's a map on the website too, but I can always get you all more information if you need it. The downtown is one area. And then the northern region, which is like down Boyer, is the other. And as Ellie spoke to that really magnificent project with the Schweitzer cutoff loop, that was a great example of a northern project that was done. And then there was special funds allocated for the Silver Box program, and we have $5,159.78 remaining for that as well. Did I miss anything with SURA and how that works? Very cursory.
The only other thing I would say is the SURA dollars come through taxable building projects, and the 2.5% is what goes to the art fund of
Perfect.
the SURA budget. So,
And I want to just clarify, I might have misspoken when I used the word capital improvement. So it's building projects, you're right, is a more appropriate word for that. I appreciate you mentioning that.
I have a question.
Yes.
The 14,000 that's already been spent on the Silver Box, did that cover 2 or 3 years?
I bet you.
Hi, Andy.
I think that covered the entire project, so it may have.
Hey, guys, I cannot join the video. Can you hear me?
Let me see if I can turn it on for you.
And so that also included the cost of the boxes.
And did all of them get done that were in those first 3 phases
I get an
pre-pandemic?
error message says fail to start the video camera.
It's on his end.
Andy, I think the video camera is on your end.
Okay.
Be on your computer.
It was working a second ago. I mean, not this, I was on another, I thought I had another link and I tried it and it was working then, but every time I hit start video, I get.
Andy, let's go ahead and just proceed through audio if you're comfortable with that.
I'm fine as long as you guys are.
Okay.
He's wonderful to look at, but for the meeting, we'll just go with his voice.
All right, so this is onboard training with Andy.
Andy
Doman?
Doman.
Okay, are you guys, are you ready or?
Ready for you.
Okay, great. So thank you for allowing me to participate in your meeting this afternoon. We had talked about doing just a brief presentation on the open meeting laws under Idaho law. And I just wanted to preface this by saying that there is a whole body of law in Title 74 to the Idaho Code that deals with transparency and ethics in government. There are 4 chapters. One is dealing with public records. The second deals with open meetings. The third deals with ethics in government, and the fourth deals with prohibitions against contracts with officers or elected officials of any governmental entity. I want to preface our discussion by looking at Chapter 2, which deals with open meeting laws, and I'll read to you the preamble or the first statute of that section. It says that the people of the state of Idaho, in creating the instruments of government that serve them, do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies so created. Therefore, the legislature finds and declares that it is the policy of the state that the formation of public policy is public business and shall not be conducted in secret. That's a pretty powerful preamble to what we do in our various committees and councils with the city and other governmental entities. And basically, I've advised clients over the years about, what does that mean? What does it entail? And I think the best way to think about it and to look at it is to remember that whatever decisions that you make as a committee, and whatever information that you discuss as a committee is open to the public. There are some limited exceptions to that, which usually don't apply to committees such as your committee, more towards like a governing authority like a city council or a board of county commissioners or board of trustees for the school district. But in reality, our business is public business. And the best way to think of it is anything that deals with a decision or a deliberation over a particular matter is public business. For instance, if you have a decision to make or a recommendation to make that comes out of your committee, and you're making a recommendation is going to be based upon an affirmative vote of the members of your committee, that's public business, and it should be conducted in the public sector. Similarly, any discussions that you have or any deliberations you have about a particular item or a particular issue that you're going to formulate and then later make a decision is still public business. My recommendation to you is anything that you do in terms of the business of your committee should be done in an open session of your committee, such as you're conducting right now. I'll give you a couple of examples. And I represent some school districts, so this kind of has hit home on several occasions. A number of years ago, there was a board of trustees that was considering termination of one of their teachers. And the board had authority to recommend termination. They had a due process hearing that they were conducting. The teacher was represented by counsel. The board was represented by counsel. During the presentation of the case, there were two members of the board of trustees sitting on opposite ends of the dais. They were exchanging email or text messages back and forth to each other saying, "Can you believe what this guy's done? Yeah, this sounds really bad. You know, I think we ought to terminate him." The decision of the board was to terminate. The attorney for the Idaho Education Association, who is a friend of mine, sued. And about the second thing he asked the board of trustees through their counsel was for those two board members' cell phones. And you know what? He got the information. Information was being deliberated or discussed during a termination proceeding by two of the board members, and it was a public record. I want to try to avoid any improprieties or anybody asking you folks or any other member of the city council or any other governmental entity from having to do that because of deliberations or things that you undertake in your various roles as committee members here. My recommendation to you is if there's a decision to be made, or there's even deliberations to be made with respect to items that come to your attention or before you, that should be done in an open session of your committee. I would refrain from having those discussions outside of the committee. Does that mean you can't visit with one of your fellow board members? No, but remember, the preface and the preamble to the entire section is that the business of the state is to be done and conducted in the public sector. So that's the reason for a lot of these laws. Now, does that mean all communications are public? Well, yes and no. For instance, if your chair sends a invite to everyone for a committee meeting on a certain date, is that something that's going to be, it is a public record, but is it something that is a deliberation? No, it's just an information email to other members of the committee. However, if it says we're going to discuss these items and this is what I think about them, and then you probably are deliberating, and that could become something that would be subject to a disclosure under the Public Records Act. So I think you need to make sure that you guard against those kinds of discussions with your fellow committee members outside of the context of your meetings. I want to also tell you that there is a really good pamphlet available through the Idaho Attorney General's office. And I know we're going to try and get you a link to that so that you can take a look at it. It deals with public records and public meetings and the kind of the do's and don'ts and those kinds of issues. There's also some questions that you can look at to, you know, kind of familiarize yourself with various scenarios. It's a good resource if you ever have a question. The other thing I would tell you is, if you ever have a question about public meetings, I'm the guy. Give me a call, you know, go through your chair, but I'm the guy that can answer those questions for you as a city attorney. So I'm happy to do so in order to share that information with you. And finally, most of this is just common sense. You know, when in doubt, I would always recommend that you conduct deliberations and or make decisions in an open forum. It just solves a lot of problems in the long run. So that's kind of my advice. We could probably talk about you know, some other examples. I would like to give all of you an opportunity to ask me questions, because a lot of this is just you know, if you don't deal with this on a regular basis, it's just unfamiliar territory. So I really would encourage you, if you have questions, now's the time for us to discuss them, and I can give you as you know, the information, you know, that I know, and we can share that and talk about it. So does anybody have any questions, anything that I can cover that'll help?
We have one individual. Woody, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, and it's Woody Sherwood. And I understand all the things you're talking about here with the discussion and open business and stuff, but is there anything referencing to the statute about if the size of the group and relative to a quorum and stuff like that? So, you know, the idea is that you shouldn't have a meeting outside of a meeting if you have more than a quorum. But where do you go when you're in social situations and stuff where, you know, there's another board member someplace and, you know, and the conversation comes along, or the public's involving you a little bit and stuff, and, you know, maybe you've had one drink too many or something, you start talking about this stuff. You know, are you in a bad shape if we're less than a quorum, or is it just a blanket prohibition against it?
Woody, those are all really good questions. And I'd like to tell you that there's a bright line in the statute says, thou shalt not have more than 2 drinks when discussing city business. I'd be a fool and a liar to tell you that's a hard and fast rule. But here's what I would suggest. This is my recommendation. Think about it this way. Are you conducting, you know, it's one thing to say, well, you know, I'm really kind of looking forward to the next meeting when we discuss this, or, you know, I really struggling with this between you and another board member. Oftentimes it's a question not of impropriety, but it's the appearance of impropriety. So if you're sitting at the local coffee shop having a conversation with one of your fellow board members, and if the subject comes up, I think the best thing to do is to remember the setting and remember the context of what you're dealing with. For instance, I don't think it's inappropriate to say, yeah, we're going to have a tough time on that, but with that issue, but I think we need to, you know, talk about a later point in time. That's the easiest way to refrain from any appearance of impropriety, in case the person at the next table is eavesdropping or listening to the conversation. With regard to a hard and fast rule about can we conduct business with less than a quorum, you can't make a decision without less than a quorum. Can you have a subcommittee of a committee to discuss various items? There's a lot of public entities that do that. But in reality, you are deliberating on a particular issue. And regardless of whether or not it's a quorum or not, you still, you're deliberating towards a decision at some point in time. I would just recommend the easiest thing to do is just do it when you're sitting in your chair right now and visiting with the committee.
Okay, I think maybe you misunderstood my point about the quorum. My point about the quorum was is that if you're in a subgroup of people at a cocktail party and it's less than the quorum for whatever committee you are, so like if you're a county commissioner, you couldn't be with another county commissioner because then that would constitute a quorum if
Sure.
the two of you were at the same meeting. What I was trying to say is if there was two of us, but we've got 10 in our group, so obviously we don't constitute a quorum. Can we have some level of conversation? Because no matter what we do, we cannot affect them. You know, we cannot make a decision that is binding on anybody, or
Yeah.
because we're not a quorum.
Andy,
remember-
what you had said to me that was really helpful is what is the worst case scenario, like the implementation of what could happen would be like the great work that we're doing could be undone. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And
you know, I
That's
think.
the why.
I think there's a distinction between making a decision and deliberating on something. And again, I think you make a good point. It's what's the worst case scenario? If the person next to you at the table says, you know, if these guys are talking about these things on a regular basis outside of the committee meetings, what is the perception of what's going on within the committee? Do we have, you know, committees within the committees deciding things? I just think the easiest and the best way to approach something like that is just to say, yeah, I agree, I understand, but I think we should talk about that within the context of our overall committee structure. If you have, that way, nobody can ever accuse you of deliberating on an issue outside of your committee meetings. Is it going to keep you from having those discussions and, you know, not having them at all? No, but the thing to keep in mind is it's not so much impropriety, it's the appearance. And sometimes people's perceptions of what transpires in a committee such as yours is a lot different than what actually does. And I think that's the thing we need to guard against. So you can't really, I'm not going to tell you you're going to rule out all conversations because I'd be a fool to tell you that. But I would recommend to you that if you get into that scenario, I would probably just say, you know, let's talk about that at the next meeting. I agree, we should do it at that time.
So we have planning and zoning meeting coming in at 5 o'clock. So we have one more question, Andy, and I really appreciate your time. You've been so helpful. Hannah?
Andy, if the commission here did create a subcommittee to work on a specific project, and the creation of that subcommittee were in the minutes for this meeting, would that create the level of transparency so the public would understand, like, some members of this commission will be discussing this specific topic outside of the open meeting, but there's that understanding that there are parameters about what would be discussed?
That's such a good question, Hannah. And actually, Melissa, Andy, and I have done a deep dive about subcommittees because we have so many specific projects that we have to get done and so little meeting time.
So yeah, we had a discussion about that, and you know, here's my take on it. If you're gonna deliberate, and it sounds like you will on a specific subject, is there any reason why you can't do it in a meeting? And just set it up with a public, agenda and put on an agenda and have a meeting.
And I think we landed on the fact that if we have subcommittees and we want to do a smaller group, we're just going to go according to open meeting law, and we won't necessarily have it in the chambers, but we would have it in one of our public conference rooms in City Hall.
Just to throw into, I think Hannah brought up something really good. I hadn't thought about that part, especially where we do in this new merged commission, We represent two very distinct strains that are working well together of arts and historic preservation. There may be a need to have some subdivision of certain projects and
Yeah,
responsibilities.
we're absolutely going to need to do that. Very good point. And that's again where we have to do it according to open meeting law, which would, again, if it's not going to be in the chambers, we have a great public meeting room that will do that. And it just protects us
You will
from,
never be wrong if you will never be wrong if you do it in an open meeting. You will
Yeah.
never, you can never be criticized for, like I said, conducting the business and affairs of the city in private. You may not, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a story. This is really interesting. So last week, the city passed a $50 million budget. And they conducted a public hearing on whether or not, to take public comment on the proposed budget. Jennifer Stapleton, city administrator, did a really good job of presenting that to the city council and to the mayor. Madam Secretary Melissa was cued by Kate McAllister, who was acting as a presiding over the meeting. She says, is there anybody here to comment on or to testify at the public hearing? No, Madam President, there's not. $50 million budget, no public comments. You may never have a public comment. You may not have anybody from the public ever come to your meeting, but nobody's ever going to criticize you for not having a public meeting if you do it in the context of what you're talking about now. I always think it's funny because we've had other public meetings where the issues have been somewhat controversial. We'll have hours of public testimony, but nobody testified about the $50 million budget. I thought that was rather remarkable. So
does anybody have any other questions? Andy, you have been so helpful. Thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate all the clarity.
Thank you.
betcha. Yeah, and please feel free to contact me.
Perfect.
Thank
You
you.
folks have a good afternoon.
Andy, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Ellie,
Did we have any other questions
Yeah.
about that? I mean, I think that we've had work groups in the past because we were operating under the assumption that if you didn't have a quorum, you could work on your RFP or whatever you were working on, then bring it back to the group. But now I'm understanding that
that's
we'll
correct.
get those groups together and we'll be here and that will be transparent.
Absolutely. And again, my understanding is that, if it's not done according to this particular way, a great project that we've spent so much time that's important to our community that we're doing could actually be undone or not be approved to be moved ahead. And that is the risk that we're facing. So, and just to add to that, we're going to talk quickly about our master plan. But on page 117, it's really interesting. It talks about the merge of the commissions and the composition and then the duties. If I were reading this as a commission member, which I was for 6 years, I would almost think, okay, this is stuff that I need to do. But we got to take the word I out of it because we can only do these duties as one body. So that means that we do all of this work when we're in a meeting all together. I can't go out individually. Well, I can because I'm a hired employee of the city, but as a commission member, I wouldn't be able to go out and do survey, document, and preserve historical resources on my own. We all have to do that together. And I learned quickly the why behind that. We have hundreds of different people at the city, all these different master plans in place, all these different, it's kind of like a beehive with all these bees buzzing around. And everything we do has an implementation and a result. And we need to make sure that that's always in line with the comprehensive plan, the strategic plan. And that's really my job for all of you, is to make sure that our projects are aligned with all the other things that we're doing at the city. And so remember, we're not commissioners, we're a commission, and one body. We have advisory roles as that one, but not individually. So we have power as one, we are powerless individually as an advisor. Does anybody have any questions on that? I'm just trying to keep it simple and this is gonna be fun. You know, it seems like very like, here are the rules, but like, this is gonna be a fun. I want everyone to be comfortable, like great team, because we have some really exciting projects moving forward. So.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, figuring out these issues is a great thing to do right up front as the new commission, so that going forward, we don't have any hiccups.
Perfect. Thank you all for your time and patience on understanding all those things.
All right, so we do have 55-ish minutes before planning and zoning comes into this room. So let's get on to old business. 6A, NEA, ARP subgrant program. Heather's gonna give us an update.
Perfect. So I sent out my rough draft to all of you of what that subgrant looks like. Does anybody have any questions about it? So I'm just going to remind you, this is the National Endowment of Arts through the American Rescue Plan. So it's the $100,000 that we're distributing through arts organizations. I also have, you guys are my advisory group on this. This is going to take, you know, we're going to have some subgroups for this. If you are applying for the grant and you're part of an organization that's applying, you have to recuse yourself of that. So we need to keep that in mind too. So I'll send you out an email. We do want to get this going fairly soon. I have it slated on council agenda for the 7th of September. My launch date is to hopefully be for September 15th. I have a few more documents I'm putting together, but was it pretty, I tried to keep it pretty simple, straightforward. No questions about this? Perfect. I worked with the individuals with the NEA. They've looked over the rough draft. I also want to set up a subcommittee of individuals that have a lot of experience within this world. And so I'm working on that currently. I have Kate McAllister and she said yes. I've reached out to Geraldine Lewis and she hasn't gotten back to me yet. And Andrea, excuse me, I'm going to butcher this. Marcia.
I do the same thing.
Marcia,
Close
Thank
enough.
with the Matchwood.
Yeah,
Anybody else have an idea, someone that would be a good fit for the subcommittee to kind of help support us with the advisory committee for this grant?
Would they be involved
Marilyn.
in, so would these be the people who would be like selecting
Yeah.
recipients?
That's correct. Marilyn
Marilyn
Sabella.
Sabella could be great.
I just
for
hear
it.
the first name and I know.
Yeah, I mean,
She's
potentially,
fantastic.
she certainly has the
Okay.
experience.
Perfect. Yeah, just kind of extra support because I think a few of us are not going to be able to participate. So I think that would help. So next steps will be having it launch, and then I can always send you guys a timeline of what this is all going to look like. We'll create, I think, a subcommittee to look this over, like a special committee of us, and then kind of go from there. So I'm going to kind of move quickly, but you guys stop me if I'm moving too fast.
so
Mhm.
can I just get a clarification? So like,
Absolutely.
if Karen was on the committee, did I say your name correct? Karen?
Close enough for me to
Karen?
look up.
Karen, sorry.
Karen.
But Karen, if she was on that committee, she could recuse herself if they had an application during the discussion for her application, but she could provide feedback for the other parts of the group.
That's a great question. So through the whole process, she would have to recuse
Yeah.
herself. So she
No.
could, so that's why we'll create a separate subcommittee and she would not be able to be on it if the music conservatory applies.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to create bias, so I think that's necessary to be removed. completely.
Well, I understand that part of it, but I also understand that you have to get people that are involved with that aspect of people to get the information, you know, to make sure you're judging it correctly.
That's
Yeah.
why having anybody you can think of, that would be a great,
Okay.
community member that we can pull on, I think is a really good idea.
Yeah, we've got a lot of community members.
So if you
Really
can't think of it right now, please shoot me an email. I'm trying to get this going pretty quickly. And thank you all for your time at looking it over. Okay, and just a reminder, it is a general operating grant. It is not program related, which is amazing, and that
Is
never
amazing.
happens. It's like a unicorn piece, so.
All right, any other questions on that? All right, then let's move on to 6B, Phase 3 SPCU utility box wraps.
Okay, so I stepped in when we were in phase 3, which with phase 3, some of it was done. There were a few boxes that were not. We have 2 locations that are not done. Fifth Avenue and Cedar, there's 2 boxes. So that's by like Carousel Smiles. All the historical photos have been chosen and they actually have already been paid. The museum has been paid for those photos. We have location 14, Larch and Fifth Avenue. Quite a few boxes. We actually have 4 boxes. Artists have been selected, Whitney Palmer, Darius Judd. They have also been paid for the artist stipend. Why this didn't get completed would be, we had $777.05 due. So what I have done, I'm working with Brett at Busy Beaver, who was already working on the project. He's creating mock-ups for me on it. And I've contacted the individual at STCU, checking in with them. And I haven't heard back from the contact at STCU. So my question to you guys, we obviously need to complete these boxes and STCU is very philanthropic with this, but I'm thinking maybe we want to do a phase 4. So I'm bringing that up. We can, due to time, we can talk about it now or put it on for discussion later, but.
I would go with your recommendation. I think we should look at phase 4.
Okay.
There's more places and in traveling around US and Canada, I see lots of these and all. One city even had all those, whatever you want to call them, digital trash cans actually wrapped.
Oh, yeah. So I just think it's a great opportunity. It's paid for by STCU. I feel like they make a great visual impact.
Do we have already a map of the locations that would be a part of phase 4?
No, and that's where I would love you all to kind of, that was what I've been trying to wrap my
Brand new.
mind around. And these are Avista boxes. And so I will reach out to Avista, but I worked with a few people in planning and zoning and they don't have a GSI layer that has these Avista boxes. And so I think it might make sense as if like we kind of go out and identify some locations from a pedestrian standpoint that makes sense. And then we can kind of plot it out from there. So so as a commission, this is kind of some homework. We're gonna want to do a scavenger hunt and figure out what that process is. All the people that were a part of this process are no longer here. So I'm starting from scratch. I have their notes, but I don't have anything when it comes to like, how did you identify which boxes you wanted to do? But my understanding is, and I did talk to Linda Heiss, she's so great. She came down and showed me some things. She said that they focused on like the downtown area. So maybe we want to stretch that out a little bit. So I think in the next meeting, let's decide what phase 4 looks like. What are our parameters? So is it like pedestrian walking visibility? You know, and so can we put that on the agenda for next time? And
Sure.
I'll let you do that formal process of.
And actually, if STCU isn't willing to go to phase 4, maybe we should think about funding for phase 4 in other ways. So let's be
Brilliant.
thinking about that.
And is it not just like, do we want to expand? I mean, is it more, well, we do have current photographers too. So we have historical photos, but do we want more current photos or is it a curated box of location? Like, what does that look like?
We worked hard to have a balance so far up
Love
through
that.
phase 3 of art and photography. I don't think we had a thing about having to be historical or contemporary, at least in so far. And I think that worked out very healthily
I
well.
think so too.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to slate this for this year's project would be finishing phase 3, continuing phase 4. We get $7,500 from them in one check. So we just need to kind of figure out according to what boxes, what that looks like. And then I can always give you guys an idea of how much each box is too. So we'll talk about that in the next meeting, what the parameters are.
How many boxes are they wrapped?
That's a great question. So this is phase 3. Can I get back to you on that?
Something like 12 or
I
15.
think so.
Yeah, quite a few.
So just a few a phase though, 3 to 5.
No, for instance,
don't have my information with me, but.
Locations, yes, but some of them had multiple
Yeah.
boxes.
For instance,
Okay, like
this
that.
one location has 4 boxes that are
Okay.
wrapped. Some only 1, some 2. So it's per location, but there's many boxes per location. But that's a great question. So does anybody else have any questions about this project as we're moving forward that I could answer in the meanwhile? So how many boxes have we done? Any others?
Yeah, the cost per box.
Okay. And then maybe we phase this out. So there could be a phase 4, and we think about it in $7,500 increments. But if we're gonna do a map, maybe we want to holistically understand opportunities and then break it out from there.
Sounds great.
Do we have a map of where they're at?
I could get that.
Thank
together.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And map, perfect, great question.
In fact, I might already have.
I think we have that.
I can't remember if we
I
put
thought
that
so.
on
I
the.
just took all the notes from before out of here and I got any money that was in there.
Now it's in the recycling bin. I know I have map of phase 1.
I thought and then we did another one for phase
We
2
do.
because we
I'll
were
keep
trying to
looking.
decide. So,
It's sometimes notes from different individuals are well organized according to the way their mind is, but it's like, oh, a little
Yeah,
bit
'cause
of a treasure
The
hunt for
commission
me.
is the one is who chose where
Okay.
they were.
We'll work
so,
together on
yeah.
getting that information.
All right.
So where and what they are.
Yes,
artists and stuff.
actually. Well, we determined what boxes we were going to cover. We determined which boxes would be historical photos, which ones would be artwork, and kind of did the matrix there.
Mhm.
And then we had a selection committee, whole separate selection committee that chose artwork from the RFP.
and we had Aaron pull up a city map because I remember the meeting. We had Aaron pull up a city map and we went around the selected boxes by looking at where they were on the map.
Oh, okay. So the boxes weren't on the map. You were just looking at the city map to understand like specific locations.
Yes.
Okay, so if I had a city map, that would be helpful.
Because he
Okay.
had a bunch with overlays and we were, just looking around on that map.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. That's a good starting point. Okay.
All right, so we have some homework. That's good. All right, shall we move on then?
Yes.
All right, how about 6C, the Silver Box Public Art on Loan Project? So as we said earlier in the meeting, we do have a remaining balance in our budget that we've already presented to Sura for the Silver Box Project. So if we wanted to do another year of art on loan, we have money in there for $1,000 stipend for 3 artists. So I did pull up the previous RFP that we had used. We can probably just reuse that. That's the beauty of the program is, it should, going forward, it should be the same every year, basically, as far as, the nuts and bolts of it. So if you guys chose to go forward with that, since we have the money, I thought it was a great program and, it worked hard on it for a long time. And so I would love to see it go forward. I would love that. The one thing that we would have to think about is we put the call for proposal out on Cafe. Now, that is a yearly cost to be a member of Cafe and to, be able to put out calls on that platform. That's a web platform that has gotten us very good results, I think. You can dial in what region you want the call to go to. There's all sorts of criteria that you can plug in to make that happen. But it does cost money. And so we have enough money also in that budget if we chose to do that to, open up our subscription
With
again.
the 3, oh, go ahead, Hannah.
Do we know if the cafe membership is still active or if it lapsed while this new commission was being formed?
Well, your membership is only good for 1 year. And so, yes, we would need to re-up.
With the 3 $1,000 stipends, are there other costs involved too that might take up most all of this 5,159?
There's plaques. I believe the artist pays for shipping. getting the artwork here. We'd have to look into it, but I think that there's not a whole lot of
Pretty
extra
minimal.
money involved other than the call for the cafe. So that, and I don't know if cafe's gone up in the
I'll
time
look
that
into it.
we've done this. There was like if you were gonna do lots of calls, you could do the big membership. If you were gonna do 3 calls a year, it was a lot less expensive.
Okay.
So we would want to look into that and find out what would be the best.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we used cafe for the box wraps also. Did we? Yes, yes. So,
It seems like it's an important tool for
Yeah.
a lot of the projects we have cited for.
and so that's the thing about that is we kind of do want to determine what we're doing as far as how many calls we're going to need before you activate it, I suppose.
Perfect.
Well, depending on what you find out.
And do you know, I remember you saying that for one of these projects, you sent out a call, didn't get a lot of applicants and had to send out another call. Do they count those as 2 separate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do. But we're not going to have that problem again because we
fine-tuned.
know better now.
Okay, before we go on, I have a question. We've passed over 2 things that are action items, and normally when it says action item, you have to take a vote. So I don't want, if we were supposed to vote, I don't want it to come back and say, well, you didn't vote
That's
on if we
true.
did this or not.
Well, I think everything's marked as action items, actually.
But,
Tammy, can
yeah.
you,
I
uh,
marked them as action items in
In
case you
case,
need to
okay.
make a motion
Okay.
to proceed with
Okay.
something. I didn't have any guidance on what things
So-
might be action items, so I
Okay.
just err on the side of caution.
All right, so
All right, so
but,
that's
so 6B would be an action item because we have decided to go ahead and talk about phase 4. So that would be an action item.
So you would need to make a
We
motion.
would need to
then.
make a motion on that one.
And same with 6C, I would think.
Yeah.
Could I ask one more question on
Yes.
that wraps? Is it, so we've got historic photos or art?
Mhm.
Is it possible to say promote something else, arts, culture, history in the area? So is it, like, say we're promoting the festival or something along those lines with one of the
It couldn't
wraps?
be any type of like sponsorship promotion opportunity, or it could be like maybe a picture of the festival from an artist.
Okay.
But it would
But it
have to be
wouldn't-
like
right.
art, culture, history.
Okay.
We can dive in and understand those parameters soon.
Yeah,
guys,
no, that'd be good.
I am so sorry. So I said 5:30 is our meeting, but they have to set up at 5. So
Oh,
what it's okay. So what we're gonna do, there's a lot of stuff at the little bit bigger picture. So we're just gonna cover, we're definitely gonna do the election of the chair. But and I'm going to talk about historic preservation, which could cover 7E, 7F, and 7G. So we're just gonna kind of buzz a little bit faster. And then what we'll do is we'll make sure that the next meeting is at least an hour and a half. We'll schedule that on there. And I don't have a problem with meetings being longer, but I think in the meanwhile, we might want to start getting these subcommittees going. And we can do some of that through email and start establishing those.
so we need to do these votes, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
We need to do the.
So what are we actually voting for?
So
on the
actually,
box
we need
wrap?
to make a motion that we are going to continue this utility box wrap with a phase 4.
Even though Heather is still looking into.
Well, we could say that, we're looking
Okay.
into, we're, making a motion to look into continuing a phase 4 of the utility
All right.
box wraps.
Well, would someone like to make that?
I just did.
I'll second.
Perfect.
And I'm sorry, guys, I'm still learning everybody's
Carol.
names. So if you could say
Carol.
your name with your motion, that would be super
Steve.
helpful. Some of you are.
All right, so is all,
And then we just got the highlight of the silver box.
well, we still have to vote on that.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, do we want to
Well-
continue forward with doing another trial of that?
Well, we have to vote on
We have to
this.
vote
Oh,
on-
excuse me,
Yeah.
I'm
We
so
got a motion
sorry.
on the floor.
The newbie, apologies.
All right, so Cammy, can you restate the motion?
Carol made a motion to move forward with investigating a phase 4 for the utility box drops. And we have a second,
Barry seconded.
Steve,
Oh, Steve.
and all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Anyone opposed?
Point of
Okay.
clarification,
Okay.
should we be asking I, no, and abstain? It's a
yeah,
common
We never did
practice.
that, but we can put it in place.
Well,
That's-
Yeah.
Because sometimes with minutes, that could happen especially. But anyway, just asking.
Well, if there's a nay, she asks for nay, so you put the nay. If somebody wants to, they can call for a division. And a division is then everybody has to be on the record for what their vote.
Like a
was.
roll call vote.
Right.
All right. Well, that motion passed. Let's go on to the next one that we need to do. So the 6C, may I have a motion to continue with the Silver Box project research?
So many. Woody.
Thank you, Woody. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, that motion passes.
Okay, so far for the year, we have slated the NEA grant. We're looking to phase 4 for the STCU wrap boxes, and we're going to activate a new silver box public art there. Okay, very, very good.
All right, so next up, we want to get this done, the 7B election of the vice chair. Is there any discussion about this?
Who's willing
Mike,
to
I
do it?
haven't heard from you. How are you doing out there?
Hello.
Mike?
I'm doing well, just listening and learning. So
We're making our way through this.
Can I nominate somebody?
Sure.
I nominate Steve Carter to take it.
I would be interested also because, as you know, I believe in it'd be healthy and good to have preservation and arts, sort of both represented strongly in the co-chairs or chairs or whatever. But I would be happy to do that, and I'm getting more and more involved in preservation, so. Not to the detriment of arts. I love arts too, but
I'd like to ask Mike, actually. Mike, are you interested in anything like this?
no,
Wow, that was clear.
that was definitive.
Well, thank you.
We're
Thank
always
you for
thinking about you.
I appreciate that.
that. Well, then, there's been a nomination. Any other discussion?
I think we would need a second, right?
I'm keeping quiet.
Kenny, do we need a second or do we
Do
need
you
a?
need a second?
All right. Is there anyone who would like to second that nomination?
I'll second that. Rick.
Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, looks like that motion passes. and
Congratulations.
Thank you
Steve is
all.
our New
I'm-
vice chair.
Passionate about this whole thing.
Yay. Okay.
All right. So Heather, did you?
I would like to talk about this new program I was going to introduce to you guys during the next meeting.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Jamie, can we just bump?
Is that C or D?
That was
7C.
7C, Leggy Trees, and I'll leave you all looking forward to hearing what that's all about.
Google it.
You might be worried what you get when you Google that. And this is also 7D. Let's put on for the next docket.
Table.
What I want to mention though with this is when we're understanding public art and placemaking, homework moment, let's figure out in the next meeting, what are our parameters and what's the scope for public art? That we kind of that can be guiding forces for us when we're making these decisions. I think that's a really helpful thing.
Are you able to send out any resources that would help us understand that?
Absolutely.
I'm curious, is a story walk that the library implements considered public art?
I would think of that more as like a program, but I think, it could probably fall into art. It was definitely identify the library in our master plan. So, I mean, that's the big question is what is art, right?
Oh my
So-
God.
So something to talk about in that next meeting.
All right, so 7E Idaho Heritage Conference. Are we gonna, shall we table that? We only have a few more minutes.
Well, it's in about 3 weeks.
Yeah,
You
so
want to go quickly?
yes, if I may speak to that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all a really important concept about where we are with the city and historic preservation. And what that will do is it will help make sense of 7E and 7F and a little bit of 7G. And so obviously this is a really hot topic right now. And I think one of the things that has created huge concern within the community is that rendering over on Bridge and First.
Mhm.
Okay, so what we all need to understand is that that is a visual concept that the developer put together to get people excited and get more investments going. That has not been vetted by the city.
Or
So
approved.
we have not, so yeah, we need to all understand that. So what you see there, just like according to our code and everything, they haven't even worked through any of that. So if people want to talk about that, that's something you can share with them. The other thing that we all need to understand is that we do have a current code with a historic overlay and design overlay, and that covers materials, windows, step back, use of materials, like all of those things. But moving forward, we're really excited because we are announcing a waterfront design competition. So this is going to be along the Sand Creek area. And what this is doing is addressing the community's concerns with design and historic preservation and development and how that all makes sense for our downtown area. And what that design competition is going to do is we are working with the amazing architects and designers and bringing in a lot of incredible talent and historic downtown districts, cities our size, and really well thought out long-term design planners. These are all like experts in these fields that will come forth and help guide us and present different design opportunities, which I can talk about a little bit more in the future. And so through that design competition, we'll be able to determine what like our historic look, feel, and fit and character is of downtown. And from those parameters, we'll also be able to further understand and extend that to different areas of planning and development throughout our whole community. So this is a really, really exciting, big deal, what we're doing.
Just to make sure I'm
Mhm.
clear, so it sounds like you're saying you anticipate that as a result of that process, there would be some specific actions or code or design things likely enacted. I'm not trying to go too
Yeah,
far.
we're
I'm just-
definitely with those team of experts. So what the designers will be looking at will be understanding our natural resources, protection of the water. This will be all around the Sand Creek area and some extension of that. Best use of water too, accessibility to it, design aesthetics, historic preservation.
Districts.
They'll be evaluating all of those aspects. And so this will happen quicker than you can imagine. And we are going to get to be a part of that.
That's what was my next
Okay,
question.
so there will be art and historic preservation opportunities identified and understanding needed. And so, yes, we will be able to be a part of that. And so when it comes to further training with the Idaho Heritage Conference, re-looking at our neighborhood surveys, Steve brought up these really great things. That's all really wonderful. But I think what we really need to do is just put that in our parking lot of great things for the future. and be ready to help and support this new design competition that is coming forth. What I do see for historic preservation for the coming year, and again, we can talk about 7G and the next meeting about what are our true priorities, would be the walking tour with our historic, our walk through history, our map, getting that back up and running, potentially nominating a historic preservation effort for an orchid or an onion. This is what we're really doing right now because we have such huge projects in the works and we're just getting started as a new commission. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm learning a lot and I'm new in my role, obviously through some of the meeting actions, but let's go for that low hanging fruit and let's do some implementation action and really show off what we can do, start there and then build. But you know, we as a commission, as much as we want to, can't go in there and all of a sudden change code overnight for historic preservation as much as some of our individual desires want to. But what we can do is have an understanding and be ready. And if you guys have, I will have time, I highly encourage you all to go through your master plan. And there are identifiables in here and implementation actions. This has been adopted by City Council, which means that we, within a 5 to 10 year period, need to implement everything. But what we have to understand is that we can't do it overnight, and we have to do it according to the process that's in place with the city that goes back to our strategic plan at the city and back to our comp plan too, which I'm happy to send you guys links to. But that's really my role here, is to make sure that everything is aligning what we're doing holistically at the city too. And that's why we all have to be in really great communication, and that's why we're doing all that onboard training too. Anna, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a question about additional resources that we could use to learn more about this. One would be, we were talking about current city code regarding design and historic preservation. Can you give us some guidelines on like what parts of city code that is so we can look it up?
Absolutely.
Or send us the links.
Yeah.
the
I'm
specific- some of it
gonna
might be
follow up with
referenced.
some really great emails for
Perfect.
you guys.
The other one would be in terms of historic preservation at the state level and what the guidelines and procedures are. Is that through the Idaho State Historical Society or the SHPO?
That's
And
SHPO.
and
what
some
are
of
those
this is outlined
resources?
in the master plan,
Perfect.
but there's more details that we can use to educate ourselves further and deeper. And this is going to be great, but also I developed some relationships with SHPO and also with Preservation Idaho on our behalf in various projects we've done in the past and this summer. And I think we have a great opportunity here, but we also don't want to wait very long because of timing.
Well,
And so much critical is going on in the city.
absolutely, but with anything in your local government, it is never a good idea to be reactive to something that happens because it has serious implementations, like you know, and other strands that happen. And
I
we
agree.
have great city leadership here. I can tell you that, like, from my heart, I'm amazed every day at our team. We have great people in place. I'm a part of these big projects too, making, you know, and I come from, definitely understand the art world, working with the art nonprofits, but from the historic preservation angle, spending 6 years. So I understand, and we will use you as in your expertise in the meetings. So we really appreciate that.
I just have one more question about the waterfront design competition. The group of experts who will be working on that, is that like a committee that the city will be selecting, or will it go out as an RFP?
That's a great question. I'll get back to you
Or is
on
it
that.
consultants? I mean, what?
They're consultants. And so the way I'll get back to you on, this is all just kind of new. You guys are the first, you know, so I want to make sure that I'm talking in line, but the consultant that's spearheading it is this amazing architect, and he has his team of individuals that are specialists with planning, with historic preservation, and then the design competition will really be opening it up to a lot of the Northwest area into British Columbia. And so it's a call out to designers all over to say, help us kind of solve this problem, because it's not just about historic preservation is important. It's dear to my heart. All of those buildings downtown, like, speak to me. And I know their history intimately, but it's more than that. It's about water quality for the community and accessibility and highlighting all of the beautiful, resources that we have in the area and really making this long-term a great plan and design aesthetic that we can all celebrate and really create a legacy for our community. So this is really exciting. So that's why I'm being really clear about what our projects are for this year, because you guys are going to be a part of some really exciting things that come through that are involved with other master plans too, because our plan goes within all of the veins of the city. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was like a big, bomb drop there, but.
It's not a question, it's an aside. I'd mentioned this right before we started. I'd suggest this fall, the several of us that would want to do it, offer the city hall staff and council a walking tour, guided walking tour.
They would love.
And also that we up our relationship with Leadership Sandpoint, which, how many are graduates of that here?
Well, I'm in process right now.
Okay, well, that's close, that counts. Anyway, I think, because we used to do a half a day or whatever for them too, I'd like to step that up a little bit from this commission.
And I'm facilitating both classes that have to do with community character and historic.
Great,
preservation. I'll work with
fantastic.
Hannah, of course, of the museum.
Just
so.
because these are great, the leadership program's been here since 1993. And a
Mhm.
lot of the people gone through various things in their professional and personal lives. And it's a great network we can use as we develop more in the arts and preservation too.
Perfect. Well, you guys are all so talented and we have so many exciting projects. I'm sorry that this got squished so quickly. There's a lot of newness here, so I appreciate all your patience. I'm learning.
Yeah, actually, go ahead, Woody.
I would just like to say, I'd really like to have 20 minutes of discussion at the next meeting. I
Okay.
might not even be here about this 7G topic, item number 7G.
Okay,
And we do have, by our commission rules in 117, we do have the ability to send a recommendation and support to the council of what they're trying to do and how we appreciate what they're trying to do.
oh, great.
And we appreciate their need for light speed on this thing too, because there's a lot going on right now very quickly. And if somebody
Absolutely.
walked in with the design project right now today, there might not be the teeth in the code that all of us would like to see to properly review.
So and I'm unfortunately not in the master plan, but as a hired employee, then all of those things come to me and then I communicate with the city and then we go from there. So it wouldn't be the commission just going directly. So I am the piece of the puzzle where you would work through me and then. I
Right,
work
right. But this
with-
thing here says that we can consider and recommend to the city council
That's-
such local laws and regulations
Yep.
and ordinances as we would
And then you
desire.
go back to the chapter code 10, which goes back to where it says along with the city liaison. So you go through me.
Right, right.
yeah,
And
to
I'm
that.
only thinking we're sending a recommendation.
Yeah.
We're not saying, that's, hey, here's a new ordinance for you guys, we're.
Absolutely. But
But I
yeah.
want to try and tell them that we're supporting them as a group, and I think we need to have enough time to talk about kind of what we're trying to, as a group, feel like is going on in our community.
But they are aware, but that's absolutely something we can do is write up something and I'd be more than happy to share that,
Okay.
Perfect. So I think we need to wrap up the meeting. Unfortunately, we have planning and zoning coming in.
Yes. All right, so if there's no other questions, we're going to adjourn.
Perfect. Thank you all
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much. I really appreciate it. So I'll be sending you guys lots of information. So we'll be ready and want to go for the next meeting.
Okay, I have a comment to make. It's not really, but it's
Hold on.
about face.
If the meeting is adjourned, I need to stop all my recorders,
Okay.
please.
Meeting's on.
It's not, it's just a thought. Deep thought.
Love it.
So everybody's gonna be involved in my deep thought. Anyway, so I was thinking